if you've been following our channel at all, you know that I've been wanting to do this. Ask ChatGPT for a cheese recipe, which I then test and see how it works out. And today is finally the day. So I ran a poll a couple days ago, and as of October 16th, somewhere around 11:30, I took this picture to end the poll, which means we are doing mozzarella, which honestly, that is the one that I wanted to try. It's a more basic recipe. It's not like cheddar where it has to be aged for a month before I can try it. And ricotta is almost too easy, right? Mozzarella is a little bit more complex than ricotta. So I'm really happy y'all chose this. And so let's go run to the computer real quick and ask ChatGPT for our recipe. All right, I now have my recipe. How exciting. You did notice probably that I asked it for a raw milk mozzarella recipe, and that's because I didn't want any arguments over whether raw milk caused any kind of issues with the recipe. So I just told it I was using raw milk right off the bat. And then I did also, if you notice in step 6, it says transfer curds into a bowl, heat them in a microwave for 30 seconds to soften. We don't have a microwave, but it says or place them in hot water. So you notice I did ask them what temperature the hot water should be, because I also didn't want there to be any questions on if I messed that up or not, especially because I know what temperature that water is supposed to be going in. And it was exactly what ChatGPT said, but a few things about this recipe that I did notice seemed off to me. Being an experienced cheesemaker, I've made tons of different types of cheese. I make ricotta, cream cheese, mozzarella all the time, I make cheddar, and I made mozzarella with vinegar and with citric acid and rennet. Now, ChatGPT did go for the vinegar, which is normally a simpler recipe, but I have done it this way. So a few things that I did notice. It wants me to heat the milk to 90 degrees, which in my opinion, milk that is done with vinegar should be heated to about 115 or 120, not 90. 90 degrees is normally when you're using rennet. Then we're going to add the vinegar, and it doesn't sit quite as long as I would expect. It says only 5 to 10 minutes. I would expect closer to 15. Then it wants me to cut the curds, which is something that I normally don't do when making cheese with vinegar. Normally I do it when making it with rennet. Then it wants me to heat the curds again to 105. So not only is this the wrong temperature, even when making rennet, but I don't even normally do this step when making it with vinegar. So that's just a few things that I noticed. And it wants me to stretch the curds in hot water instead of hot whey. Normally, I've never seen a recipe where you stretch them in hot water. It's always been hot whey. So we're going to see how this works out. I'm going to try it. But otherwise, the ingredients and the equipment look pretty good. Exactly what I would expect. So let's get into this cheese recipe. All right, so the first step says take 1 gallon of raw milk and pour it into a large pot, and then heat it slowly to 90 degrees. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not wavering from this recipe at all, no matter how much my instincts tell me something needs to be changed. All right, y'all, it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So now it says to add our 1/4 cup of white vinegar slowly while stirring. I'll just go ahead and do that. And it says it'll start to curdle almost immediately, which when working with vinegar or lemon juice, that is the case. It normally starts to curdle almost immediately. All right, now it says to let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes to allow the curds to form. Now, here's another problem I just realized with the recipe. Most of the time when I let things sit like that, I put a lid on it to hold the temperature. Well, me, beginner cheesemaker who just asked ChatGPT for a recipe, doesn't know this. So I'm not going to put a lid on it because it doesn't tell me to. I don't know that it needs to stay at 90 degrees to form curds properly. So I have a feeling that this could be the breaking point of our recipe here, but I don't want to do something that ChatGPT doesn't tell me to do. All right, so this is after about 5 or 10 minutes, and as you can see, I'm not totally loving the look here of this. I'm feeling like we should have one solid block. But see, it's trying to mix what you would normally do with rennet with what you would do with vinegar, and they're just not the same thing. So we're going to keep moving ahead though with the recipe. Maybe it's going to turn out well. So the next thing it says to do is to cut the curds into cubes. Again, a step that I normally wouldn't do with making vinegar. Also, I don't really know that this is even doing anything. All right, so I cut the curds into cubes, even though it doesn't really seem to have done anything. Then it says to heat again, slowly heat the curds to 105 degrees Fahrenheit while stirring gently. This helped the curds firm up. So maybe this is where it's going to fix the issue, although normally that's higher than I would heat mozzarella curds even with a rennet recipe. So I'll heat it to 105 and see what happens. All right, it is at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it says to drain the whey. So we're going to use a slotted spoon to transfer the curds into a colander lined with cheesecloth. Let it drain a few minutes. Reserve the whey if desired for other uses. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get my cheesecloth set up real quick and then we'll strain it. All right, I don't think I'm going to be able to use a slotted spoon to get this all in here because of how runny it is. So I'm just going to use a ladle and I'm going to just ladle all of this into the colander lined with cheesecloth. Honestly, I'm going to be surprised here if we get any kind of curds. It just seems so grainy. So we're going to see how this turns out, but I don't know what went wrong here. Something definitely went wrong. All right, so I ran into a little bit of a dilemma. I did the drain the whey step, just like it said. Now it's time to stretch the curds, but here's where I ran into a problem. Now, for those of you who haven't made cheese before, you're going to have to just take my word for it, or you can go, I'll leave some videos linked that you can go watch, and you'll be able to see what real cheese is supposed to look like. But this right here, if we look at this is unstretchable cheese. And the reason that I say that is because when I just touch it, it just falls apart. And this is not what mozzarella would normally look like. It would be like a solid ball of curds that you can't just, like, you could break it apart obviously with some force, but this is not what it would look like. It wouldn't just fall apart into crumbs. So this cheese is actually unstretchable. So I'm going to have to skip that step. I don't really have a choice because if I go ahead and try and stretch this, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to fall apart into a bunch of pieces again, like it did in the way how it was before. I even tried squeezing it really tight in the cheesecloth, and that still did not help. So I'm going to have to move on to the next step, which is to add salt. And this may stiffen it up a little, but it's probably not going to stiffen it up enough for me to stretch it. I'm probably just going to have to skip that step altogether. Which will definitely ruin the cheese because stretching the cheese is actually what makes mozzarella ooey and gooey and stretchy. That's actually what does it. And honestly, I don't know. Something's off with the smell. I don't even know how that's possible. It just doesn't smell right. And I don't know how to explain it. I wish you could smell it, but you can't. I honestly just don't even know how to explain how that smells. It smells off. And I honestly don't know how that's possible with the ingredients that we put in. It may have something to do with how we heated it. We did heat it too high that second time, which may have given it maybe it's a curdled smell, like not even curdled, but almost sourish. So I don't know. Maybe it's because we heated it too high that second time. That's when it seemed to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and add salt to this in a bowl. But otherwise, I'm not sure what else I can really do with it. I can't even put this in cold water, which is the last step, because it's just going to fall apart. And see, it says add salt, shape the cheese, which I can't do without stretching, and then cool, but I can't do this either until it's shaped, which I can't shape it because it's just falling apart. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to a bowl, and then I'll add some salt, and we'll see. And giving it a good stir. Honestly, I don't even know that I'm going to be able to try this cheese. I don't know. The smell is so unappetizing to me. And I also want to mention that a gallon of milk should have made more cheese than this. Maybe this is enough. I don't know. I don't think so. To me, it looks like less cheese, but it may be just because it's all crumbly and stuff and it's not in a big ball like I'm used to seeing. All right, Joshua is my volunteer to try it because I can't bring myself to. The smell is not appetizing to me, and I'm a cheese person, so go ahead, give it a taste. Do you want the spoon? Okay, you just gotta stick your hands in there. Go for it. What?
It's okay.
It's okay?
Got a little sour and like
A little sourish? It smells sourish, doesn't it? Smell it. Okay, well, he doesn't care. So sourish, crumbly, not mozzarella at all. That's definitely not mozzarella. There is no possible way that I could have stretched that. And like I said, if you haven't made cheese before, you're just going to have to take my word for it. So if you're new to cheese making or even an expert in cheese making and want a good mozzarella recipe, make sure you check out the link down below. I'll link our 30-minute mozzarella recipe. Now that recipe does use citric acid and rennet, so I will also leave a link to a recipe that I used to use that uses only vinegar or lemon juice, and it is very good. So it's just milk, vinegar, and lemon juice. You can do it with raw milk or pasteurized milk. You can also do our recipe with raw or pasteurized milk, but that's a good one that I love to use with vinegar. So I will leave that one linked below. But yeah, I would have to say that ChatGPT, you just can't write a good cheese recipe, at least not mozzarella. And maybe I'll try a different one in the future and ask it specifically for something with citric acid and rennet. But honestly, I really think what went wrong here is that it mixed the recipes from using it with vinegar versus doing citric acid and rennet, because those are two different recipes and you do it two different ways. And it just seemed to sort of bring both of those together and just mesh them. And it heated the milk not high enough the first time and too high the second time. Plus, when I use vinegar, I never heat it a second time. I only heat it the first time. It wanted me to cut the curds, which normally I would never do when I only use vinegar. I don't think it let the vinegar sit long enough. Yeah, I just don't think that, I think that this recipe was set up for failure. It just doesn't do that well. So I don't recommend using ChatGPT to write cheese recipes for you. But if you all would like me to see me do something else with ChatGPT or a different type of cheese, make sure you drop it in the comments below. Or if you'd like to see a different cheese recipe that is not on our channel yet, also let us know in the comments below. And make sure to like and subscribe.